Okay, chances are you've already had this experience, and if you haven't, I guarantee sometime in your lifetime you will. You're driving down the street, and suddenly you come upon a car accident, or you witness one happening, or even worse, your car is involved in a car accident. Will you be prepared? Will you know what to do? Hey, welcome back to Guardwell Defense. So, today I'd like to talk a little bit about medical kits. Now, disclaimer, I am not a certified medical anything, but I have had the good fortune of being trained by some great people over the course of my career, and I'd like to share just a little bit of that knowledge with you now. Okay, so today we're going to talk about a basic medical kit. I'm not talking about the type of kit, first aid kit that you buy at the CVS pharmacy that can contend with what you do when you cut your finger. I'm talking about a medical kit that'll get you through a traumatic incident, like a car wreck, like a gunshot wound, this type of medical kit. The good news about the last 20 years of continuous warfare in various parts of the world is that IFAK, individual first aid kits that the military uses, the price points have come down and they're super affordable now, and you could buy everything you need in a particular kit. Prices starting $100, $110 or so, and going up to as much as you want to spend, literally. But you can get a pretty good IFAK for $100, $150. And you can go to a website like North American Rescue, and you can shop there and get what you need. The other alternative is you can put together something that maybe suits you and for the type of incidents you might expect to encounter. So, for example, what you don't need is something like this. So, I once attended an excellent training iteration in preparing for a war zone deployment, and at the end, we got these nice kits. I keep this in my car. The company is Conterra. This is a fantastic kit. It's really designed for somebody who is a medic. I mean, a real medic. I mean, Lord only knows if I have to take these out to help somebody, this is going to be a bad day. But this can contend with burns and gunshot wounds, which is good. I like this one. Ace bandages. I got a series of splints in here. All that's great. Super expensive though. So if you're like an EMT professional, this is something you'd want to carry. Now for the rest of us, however, who don't know how to use half the stuff in the bag, there's other alternatives. You can get that IFAK from that's already made for you, or you can put together your own. And so what I do is I keep these things in my cars. Each car has one. I keep them in the house. I keep them like every 5 feet, it feels like sometimes. But the point is, over the years, I've accumulated quite a bit of medical gear, and I make the best use of it I can now, because God forbid my family finding themselves in a bad situation. I want to make sure that I can stop the bleeding long enough for the ambulance to get here, because if you're in North America, the chances of getting to a hospital quickly are pretty darn good. All you got to do is stop that bleed for maybe 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. Once the ambulance arrives, you're in great hands at that point, professional hands, unlike some other countries overseas where the ambulance just drives you, so you still have to survive the drive. So with our EMT system, you're in good hands, but you do have to survive those first 15, 20 minutes. All right, so this is a bag I bought from, I think it's 511. And what do I have in here? So I've got a couple of tourniquets. You know, tourniquets, they're for gunshots, obviously, or more traumatic types of injuries. In a war zone, it would be an explosion where you might lose a limb. But tourniquets have really change the survival dynamic on the battlefield. And I think they're very applicable for civilian life as well. Because if you get into that traumatic crash, you know, car crashes, they're extremely violent, they catch us by surprise, and you might suddenly be faced with a serious bleed. You can slap a tourniquet on there and possibly survive the day, and you'll be good to go. Again, you just need that 30 minutes. So what else do I have in here, though? All right. So I got this thing. This is for splinting. All right, because chances are, if you're in a car crash, you're going to have somebody with a broken something, arm, leg, what have you, to stabilize the neck. So you got these things that they're form-fitting, excellent for taking care of any broken bones. The typical cat tourniquet, great. This costs about $30 now. You basically you can pre-set it up so that it can fit the largest part of your body, meaning your thigh. And these ones you can practice putting these things on yourself. And you want to cinch it down super hard. Turn the windlass until it's super uncomfortable. I can feel it already starting to numb my hand. It's really uncomfortable, but you know what? If you need to survive for 20-30 minutes till the ambulance gets there, it's well worth it. Life over limb. If you had to wear this thing for several hours, okay, I mean, if it's a life over limb thing, I'd take this any day, but there is damage that can occur, but that's over a longer period. You need to stop a bleed on your arms or legs, this will do it. And by the way, there's some great instructional videos. If you go to Vigilance Elite, for example, they've got some great videos on how to use a tourniquet. So does North American Rescue and some others. So if you visit Dr. Google, they can point you in the right direction. But I highly recommend Vigilance Elite and North American Rescue as two good references. All right, what else? So I got a nice pair of scissors here. And these are designed for cutting through clothing. So that you can dispense with trying to have to pull somebody's clothing out of the way. You just take these suckers out. These will even cut through like boots and stuff too. This one, they vary in price. This is a more expensive one, but I got it for the war zone. Thank goodness I never had to use it, but if I did, I'd want to have a good one. Or at a minimum, any kind of scissors that are made for cutting through clothing. Ace bandages. So, the good old Ace bandage. This thing is great, and they're very cheap now. I would say get as many as you can afford to have, 3 or 4 of them. You can use them to make slings. You can use them to stop the bleed. If it's a gunshot wound, you can pack it with the dressing, and then just take the Ace bandage, and you can make any kind of tight bandage to stop that bleed. Very effective. If you have several of them and you need to make a sling, you can do that with it too. You don't need any of the little clips that they normally come with. You can just tuck it in. This is a great way to bandage quickly. And so having a bunch of these on hand is probably one of the smartest things you can do for any kind of home kit, in my humble opinion. In this day and age, having something to stop gunshot wounds, the bleed from a gunshot wound, is super important. There's different things you can use. You can use gauze to plug the hole and then put on your bandage. You can use something like Quick Clot, which is a little bit controversial because it can damage the skin. There's the chemical compound in there. And but you know, life over limb. I'd rather have the option to use it than not have it. Here's a pair of cheaper scissors. Still do the trick of cutting through clothes. So this is an Ashman chest seal, and a little bit more advanced first aid. If you're dealing with a tension pneumothorax and you need to relieve pressure with a needle decompression, if you know what that's about, it's good to have something like this. But for most of us, this is not going to be applicable. I've had the training. I hope I never have to actually use the needle on anyone, because that sucker's about 3 inches long. And then those needles for the needle decompression look like this. You take off the cap. There's a long needle. So typically, if you had a gunshot wound here, you would use the chest seal to stop it. And there's air cavity. There's air that got in, and there's air also getting out, and that can cause the tension can cause the expansion of the lung on the side of the wound to make it difficult for your heart to beat and for the other lung to work properly. So that's when you would use one of these suckers. I wouldn't advise using this until you've had some training to know, but you stick it through the third rib down, and that releases the tension, and it can be good for up to 3 or 4 hours. But something to think about if you want to advance your first aid knowledge. Mostly applicable to gunshot wounds. What else do I keep in here? I keep a headlamp in here, and you know, these things are super useful so that you can have light while you are working in the dark, because Lord knows these things happen in the dark quite a bit, and being able to do that, or even put it just around your neck while you're working, is super useful. In my little bag of goodies, keep a little GPS. Don't really need it in the age of the iPhone anymore, but what the heck, one more piece of gear to have. Keep an extra little set of glasses, because I'm at that age where I got to wear reading glasses in here. And then kind of the last thing I would have in here is a notebook. You just never know what you might have to write down in an emergency. Maybe it's the license plate of another car that drove away. Maybe it's the time you placed a tourniquet. Maybe to jot down some notes to yourself, because as the pressure is going up and the intensity of the situation, you want to be able to relay to the medical personnel exactly what's transpired. So I like having a notebook. And finally, even something like, you know, a little pick-me-up of, this is the hammer gel, Mocha. Depending on where you are, if you're out someplace and you just need to get something in your stomach, I like having something like this. So that's kind of a quick rundown on, and gloves. The other one would be, of course, to have some gloves in this day and age when you're dealing with people's blood. And one last thing is I like to take some duct tape. Now, not only do I use duct tape to fix like everything in my house, but you can also use this to stop bleeds, to tie bandages. Blood is obviously very wet. You can use the duct tape to, especially if you put a chest seal in, use the duct tape to keep it on in spite of the bleeding. There's a lot of uses that you could actually just use the duct tape in and of itself if you had to. So, these are some basic ideas about first aid kits. Like I say, I keep them within arm's reach in my car, each of my cars. I also keep the big one I showed you earlier in the trunk of one car. I keep bags like this throughout the house, a couple of them. I teach my children the basics of how to stop a bleed. So these are just useful tips, because there's going to be a time in your life, if it hasn't come already, that you're going to wish you knew this stuff. So I hope that helps, and yeah, we'll see you next time. Okay, there's one more type of gear that I forgot to mention. This is probably more pertinent to law enforcement officers, and that's something called ankle first aid kits or low visibility aid kits. And these are for primarily law enforcement officers. My son is a law enforcement officer, and his waist is he's in perfect condition, so by the time he puts everything on his belt, he has no space for any kind of IFAK. But he does have two ankles, and so there are ankle first aid kits and these low visibility aid kits. I personally don't have experience with them, but I have done some research and found that they are a viable alternative if you are in uniform or in an undercover capacity. And so typically these kits will contain something like a tourniquet, something for a chest seal, hemostatic gauze, and a tourniquet. So it's the minimal, maybe scissors as well. Check it out. There's a company called Ryker Nylon Gear, and that's one place that you can look for something that can fit on your ankle. So I hope that helps. Thank you.